Okay, it's 10:01. We are still seeing a few people creep in at the last minute, but we are going to make a start. So, welcome everybody. Happy Friday morning to the launch of the City Guild Reformed Qualifications Building Services webinar. We have had a few technical issues this morning, so we've had to separate ourselves out, and you may hear a little bit of background noise. So, apologies if you do. We'll try and keep it as professional as possible, but we've got a little issue where we can't actually mute ourselves this morning. So, as always, we'll try and get around it as smoothly as possible, and we'll get cracking. So, if we could move some slides on, I'm going to introduce you to Simon Quince, who's going to be doing the main presentation of today's webinar. And over to you, Simon.
Thank you, Rob. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the webinar today. First, we're going to go through a few housekeeping rules, if that's okay. So the session is being recorded, and this will be sent out to all attendees after the webinar. Everyone at the moment is locked on mute. The slides will be sent to all attendees along with the recording. Any questions that you do have, please add questions throughout, as colleagues will be answering in the background of the webinar. There will be time at the end of the presentation for all question and answers where possible. If for whatever reason we can't get the answer to you today, we will pick that up after this webinar and may well put together a frequently asked question sheet. If for any reason the webinar link cuts out, then please join again using the link that you originally joined with. So just a brief, just quickly go through today's agenda. So we'll have a little bit of a welcome and introduction. We're going to look at the qualification overview. So we're looking at the unit content, the assessment strategy, the physical resources, the learner entry requirements, the approval process, assessor IQA requirements, the handbooks, and any further support. So the building services team, as myself, Simon Quince, the technical advisor for BSc. We also have Paloma, who is our senior product lead. We have Salim, who is joining us today on the call, the industry manager, and Matt Rogers, who is our product manager, who again is joining us on the call today. Salim, would you like to introduce yourself? Sure, he's there in the background. Now, as I say, we have had some technical issues this morning, so it may well that Salim has managed to get himself on mute. So the qualification overview. Today we're looking at the two qualifications, the 236603, which is the level 3 Technical Occupational Entry for Electrical Diploma. And we'll also be looking at the 603603, the level 3 Technical Occupational Entry for Plumbing Installations. Starting off with the electrical, so the 236603, this is a level 3 Technical Occupational Entry for Electrical Installation with a recommended guided learning hours of 490 hours. As you can see there, the QAN code 610/3899/4. Brief description, this qualification aligns fully to the knowledge, skills and behaviours in installation and maintenance electrician, so the standards ST0152, and is assessed practically with multiple choice questioning and a holistic assignment covering the qualification units. This qualification is funded for age group 19 plus. Assessment methods, multiple choice question, 2 assignments, so 1 practical, 1 written. Both externally set assignments are internally marked. Outcomes are straight pass or fail. Approval for this qualification, this full approval is required, which we'll run through later in the presentation. Entry requirements, again, we'll go through in a little bit more detail, but learners must hold a level 2 diploma in electrical installation, either a 236502, the 820202, or any other awarding organisation equivalent before being registered for the qualification. The funding for this qualification is England only. It's adult learners and it's from August 2025, and they're approved for funding until 31st of July 2028. Support resources will be available for this qualification via sample assessments and smart screen tutor resources. The unit content outline for the 236603 electrical installation. This qualification contains 6 mandatory units. Each individual unit has a bespoke guided learning hours and their own individual assessments. So just a very brief running over the units. We've got Unit 301, which is Scientific Principles, guided learning hours 100, assessment, multiple choice questioning. There is a design assignment that covers Unit 301 and 302 holistically. Unit 302 is inspection, testing and commissioning of electrotechnical systems and equipment with a guided learning hours of 78. Again, multiple choice question for this unit, practical assignment and design assignment covering the other units holistically. Unit 303 is the fault finding and diagnosis. Again, guided learning hours 32, multiple choice questioning and practical assignment. As you can see there, the learning outcomes there. I'm not going to run through all the learning outcomes. You'll have these slides to run through and access to the handbooks after this presentation. Unit 304, this is electrical design practices and procedures, 170 guided learning hours, assessment covered by multiple choice questioning and a design assignment. Unit 305, organising and overseeing electrical work activities in buildings. Again, guided learning hours of 60 hours, assessment multiple choice questioning with design assignment. And finally, Unit 306, understand the requirements of electrical installations, BS 7671 2018, Amendment 2022, which is a guided learning hours of 70 and multiple choice questioning. So again, just to refresh there, the design assignment is not a design assignment for each unit, it'll be holistically across all those units. Assessment strategy for this qualification. Candidates must complete the assessed components listed to achieve this qualification. With regards to retakes and resits, so Unit 350, 351 and 352 are all independent multiple choice questioning papers. They're on our on-demand Evolve system. Learners or candidates who have failed an online multiple choice question paper assessment are permitted up to 4 resits of the assessment. After 4 resits, then re-registration is required. Assignments. For the practical assignment, candidates who have failed 1 or more tasks in the assignments will be advised to complete a further period of learning before resitting the task. So for Part A, Task 1, which is the inspection and testing section, candidates must not have 2 consecutive attempts on the same section of the test rig. And for Part B, which is the fault diagnosis section, candidates must not attempt the same job card pack again. So it must have different job card or faults for each attempt. For the design assignment, where a candidate fails on first submission, they may be allowed 1 additional attempt to review, rework and resubmit. They may rework their initial submission materials, but not be given assessor guidance, access to assessor grading notes. Where a candidate fails following their second attempt resubmission, they will be required to complete a further period of learning and must then resit a different version of the assessment. For both the practical and design assignments, candidates are allowed 2 resit attempts before re-registration is required. So again, there you've got your 5 assessment units, 350, which is multiple choice paper on science, design and planning. Unit assessment 351, which is understand inspection, testing and fault finding procedures. Unit 352, requirements for electrical installations, BS 7671, Amendment 2022. You've then got the practical tasks, which is undertake inspection, testing and fault procedures, which is internally marked and externally verified. And you've got your design assignment, Unit 354, which is holistically across all units. Physical resources, so to those centres out there that are delivering the 2365 or the 8202 or maybe the 5357, the physical resources are very similar. It's the test rig spec as per the same test rig spec for the 5357, the 8202 and the 2365. Your general tools. The important thing to take away from this really is that centres must have suitable test rigs to facilitate training and practice. This must not be or directly replicate the assessment or the examination rig. So that's quite an important thing to take away from this resource list. Learner entry requirements. Again, learners should already hold a level 2 diploma in electrical installation, building and structures 236502 or the 820202 or other awarding organisation equivalent in order to complete the qualification satisfactorily. Initial assessment and induction. Initial assessment of each learner should be made before the start of their programme to identify if the learner has any specific training needs, support and guidance where they may need when working towards their qualification, any units they have already completed or credit they have accumulated which is relevant to the qualification, and the appropriate type and level of qualification. We do recommend that centres provide an induction programme so the learner fully understands the requirements of the qualification, the responsibilities as a learner, and the responsibilities of the centre. This information can be recorded on a learning contract. It is recommended that learners would have level 2 equivalent health and safety knowledge related to electrical and maintenance installations. Excuse me. Again, age restriction. This qualification is approved for learners aged 19 or above. Moving on to the plumbing qualification, the 603603. So this is the level 3 technical occupational entry in plumbing and heating installations, guided learning hours 445, QAN number 610/3904/4. The description of this qualification, the qualification aligns fully to the knowledge, skills and behaviours in the standards ST0303, plumbing and domestic heating technician, and is assessed by practical and MCQ with cover of the qualification units. Qualification is approved for learners aged 19 plus. Assessment is externally set and internally marked. Outcomes are pass or fail. Approval, again, full approval is required, which we'll run through later in this presentation. Learner requirements. Learners should already hold a level 2 diploma in plumbing studies, 603502 or the 8202 technical, or other awarding organisation equivalent in order to complete the qualification satisfactorily. Funding is England only. It's adult learners from August 2025, approved for funding until 31st of July 2028. Support resources will be available via sample assessments and Smart Screen Tutor resource. Unit content, so 603603 plumbing and heating installation. This qualification contains 7 mandatory units. Each individual unit has a bespoke guided learning hours and their own individual assessments. So briefly running through the units, we've got Unit 301, which covers cold water systems, 4 learning outcomes, guided learning hours 70, assessment multiple choice question with a practical assignment. Unit 302 is a hot water systems, guided learning hours 70, assessment multiple choice question with a practical assessment. Again, 4 learning outcomes to that. Unit 303, central heating systems, guided learning hours 98, assessment via multiple choice questioning with practical assignments. Unit 304, sanitation and rainwater systems, guided learning hours 44, assessment multiple choice questioning with practical assessment assignments. Moving on, we've got Unit 305, which is electrical work and control of plumbing and domestic heating systems. This has a recommended guided learning hours of 64. Assessment is via multiple choice questioning with a practical assignment. Unit 306 is domestic fuel and environmental technologies. Guided learning hours of 43, assessment via multiple choice questioning. And finally, Unit 307, planning and supervision for building services engineering projects. The recommended guided learning hours of 51, and its assessment via multiple choice question. The assessment strategy for this qualification. So candidates must successfully complete the assessed components listed to achieve the qualification. Again, as with the electrical qualification, retakes and resits, multiple choice tests. Candidates who have failed an online multiple choice question paper assessment are permitted up to 4 resits of the assessment before re-registration is required. Assignments, candidates who have failed one or more tasks in the assignments will be advised to complete a further period of learning before then resitting fully. All tasks within a different version of the assessment. Candidates can resit a different version of the assignment up to a maximum of 3 times before re-registration is required. The assessment units, so you've got Unit 350, which covers plumbing and heating systems. That's an externally marked MCQ exam, so that's on demand on Evolve. 351, again, supervisory electrical, fuel and environmental systems. Again, MCQ on demand on Evolve. Unit 352 is the plumbing and heating systems, which is internally marked and externally verified design assignment. And Unit 353 is the plumbing and heating installation and maintenance, which is an internally marked and externally verified practical assignment. Physical resources, there's quite a substantial amount of physical resources required, but again, for centres that are in the 6035 and the 8202, the 9189, the 9289, should be familiar with these resources. Again, these slides will be sent out to you on the recording, so you can run through these. The resources are in the handbook. If you download the handbooks and have a look through those. I don't think there's anything in there that's out of the normal. Entry learner requirements for the qualification. Learners will hold the Level 2 Diploma in Plumbing Studies 6502 or Level 2 Technical Certificate Plumbing 8202 or other awarding organisation equivalent in order to complete this qualification satisfactorily. Again, initial assessment and induction and initial assessment of each learner should be made before the start of their programme to identify if the learner has specific training needs, any support guidance they may need when working towards the qualification, any units they have already completed or credit they have accumulated which is relevant to the qualification, the appropriate type and level of qualification. We recommend that centres provide an induction programme so learners fully understand the requirements of the qualification, their responsibilities as a learner, and their responsibilities of the centre. This information can be recorded on the learning contract. Learners will hold the Level 2 Diploma 6035 or the 8202. This qualification is approved for learners aged 19 or above. So moving on to the approval process. To offer this qualification, centres must apply for full approval. New centres will need to become an approved centre and then gain qualification approval. To start this process, please complete the customer application form available on the website. So the links will be available when you get access to this presentation. Existing centres will need to submit a qualification approval form within the Walled Garden Quality Portal. There is more support available on our help pages, including the centre approval process document. There is a bit of a quick poll, if it's possible, that you can scan the QR code that's on the screen, whether you're wanting to look for approval for the 236603 or the 603603. I'm not sure if Rob or Salim can drop those links into the chat, but if not, you should be able to scan these afterwards. So I'll just give you a minute or two just to log on and scan those codes and complete those polls, and then we'll continue. So moving on. Assessor and IQA requirements. Quality assurance includes initial centre approval, qualification approval, and the centre's own internal procedures for monitoring quality. Centres are responsible for the internal quality assurance IQA, and City & Guilds is responsible for the external quality assurance EQA. In order to carry out the quality assurance role, internal quality assurers must have appropriate teaching and vocational knowledge and expertise, have experience in quality management and internal quality assurance, hold or be working towards an appropriate teacher, training or assessing qualification, be familiar with the occupation and technical content covered within the qualification. More information is available within the qualification handbook. Our qualification reforms webpage. So if you are interested in more information around the reforms 16 qualifications in England, there is a separate webpage on there. So you can visit that. This webpage, you can access key information on the reform process, our reform qualifications, including links to qualification web pages, access to webinar recordings, and any frequently asked questions. So again, there is a link on the presentation that you'll be able to go to, or you can find that on the City & Guilds page. Access to the handbooks. So the draft handbooks are available. Detailed information about the qualification can be found in the qualification handbooks. So by assessing the final handbook, you'll gain a clear understanding of qualification, helping you to plan ahead. So if you'd like to request a copy, you can scan the QR code on the left-hand side of the screen. If you would like to speak to any member of our team outside of this webinar, then please complete the BSE contact form, which is the QR code on the right-hand side of your screen. Getting involved. So again, it's really important to us at City & Guilds. For those of you out there that have got the skills and knowledge that want to get involved, you can make a difference. You can get involved in the development of future green skills and BSE qualifications, assessment and support resources, working for us at City & Guilds as an associate and development consultant. If this is something you're interested in, or you want to get some more details about, please feel free to click the, scan the QR code that's on the screen there. And moving on from that, our associate vacancies. So there is an associate vacancies webpage. If you are interested in becoming an associate for City & Guilds, please do go on there and look at the positions that are available at the moment. There's quite a substantial amount in the building services area of all different sort of roles. It's how I started my journey into City & Guilds 5 years ago, and it's a real good way of getting to understand the qualifications and the requirements. We do have a funding and policy webinar as well that's upcoming next Wednesday, 12 till 1:15, led by City & Guilds funding and policy experts Brian Kingsland and Eric Oliver, with guest panellist Anita Crossland looking at strategic portfolio planning, senior management. The webinar overview, this session is your opportunity to stay informed about the latest government plans for post-16 skills, and to get up to speed with the most recent changes in adult skills funding, apprenticeship funding, 16 to 19 funding. Throughout the session, there'll be interactive polls running, giving you the chance to voice your opinions and shape your conversation. This is more than just a webinar, it's your chance to engage, ask questions and gain valuable insights to inform your future strategies. So again, there is a link on the presentation if you're interested in attending that webinar. That brings us to an end of this presentation for today, and I'm sure some questions have been coming in. I don't know if Rob's available. If you let us know how the questions are going.
Yeah, so we've had a huge amount of questions, to be honest, Simon. I'll start working through them in a moment. We've got well over 100 people on the webinar today, so just apologise in the outset if we don't get to all these questions. We'll make sure we're producing some kind of FAQ document to follow up. Before we kick off with the questions, I just want to explain a few things I've dropped in the chat. The two links are the links to the forms, which try and give us a bit of guidance on who's running what next year. You know, are you going to be looking to get approval for these new qualifications? Then there's a link in there to request the handbook, as Simon mentioned, the link to the Associates tab if anybody's interested, if you'd like a callback on these qualifications as well, to try and inquire in a little bit more detail around how to deliver, how to get approval, etc. All those links are in the chat. So we'll work through the questions. I'll try and encompass more of an overview for some of the responses because we've got quite a few questions on RPL and things like that. So I'll try and answer them as a whole rather than going through individual questions and reading them out because there's quite a lot. So initially we've had queries around the regs unit in the electrical. You know, can it be certificated as the regs unit as our equivalent to 2382? It is an equivalent unit, but at the moment it's not certificated separately. We may work with industry in the future to look at that, but at the moment it's not agreed that we can certificate, if you like, as 18th edition as an individual unit. So with regards to RPL as well, a little bit of a background on these qualifications. Basically, both these level 3 qualifications have been based around the apprenticeship. So 5357 in electrical and 9189, which is now 9289 in plumbing. In electrical, if you can imagine, we've extracted the level 3 element of 5357, so the 2365 level 3 equivalent from 5357. And in plumbing, we've took away phase 3. We've then amplified that and turned them into this new product, this new qualification. So with regards to RPL, to answer a question, like I said, try and answer it holistically. In electrical, when we finalise the mapping, etc., it's looking like it's going to be very, very similar to if you've done a 2365 or 8202 level 2 and level 3, because the level 2 is a prerequisite. Once you've finished this level 3 program, it's looking like the mapping will be very similar. You know, they've got to do the regs unit if they're going to 5357 and the portfolio units, very similar into 2357. We've had questions, will they still need the bridging assignment? At the moment, it's not looking like there'll only be a need for that, but we've got to look in a little bit more detail to make sure our assessment are comfortable with that. With regards to plumbing, obviously this is developed from phase 3, so it's equivalent to phase 3. Again, if you've got the level 2 qualification and then a level phase 3, it'll give you a really good start into that plumbing apprenticeship, and you'll be very close. You might need to mop up some bits in phase 3 when we finalise the mapping, but you'll be very close to more or less going in ready to phase 4. So that's to try and give you an overview of RPL because there's too many questions to sort of read through. So we've had a question, so will there be a 19 plus level 2? So yes, there will. The level 2 reforms are what are coming next. We're looking into those at the moment, and they will be first teaching 2026. So will the new plumbing apprenticeship be available for delivery from September? E.g. level 2 and level 3, then gas. Sorry, that's around the plumbing apprenticeship. We're trying to keep the questions focused on that, but just to give you an overview and an update very quickly on that plumbing apprenticeship, obviously that standard's now been agreed. We're working on the background and we're communicating launch dates and how that's progressing in the very near future. So will the 202.30 still be funded for 19 plus? So obviously 8202's funding has been extended at the moment. So there will be an alternative to this new reformed qualification in 2025. We'll see how funding's developed. Just on that, I think to try and give you an overview of this, obviously Simon's been through the assessment strategy, but I'm just going to compare that to 8202 to try and give you a bit of an insight into the assessment strategy. So the reformed quals and technicals, let's compare them. So you've still got an end assessment or one or two end exams, and in the technicals you've got end exams stroke exam. In the reformed quals, you've still got end assignments like your design assignments and your practical assignments. 8202, you've got end assignments like your design assignments, your practical assignments, your inspection and tests, etc. For electrical, your plumbing commissioning, etc. The difference being in the reformed qualifications, one, they're on demand, and two, they're externally verified. So there's no need for moderation. They're externally quality assured by your EV. So people, the question there, I'm not going to mention names, but the question there, will 8202 still be funded? Yes, it will. But I think when we start running into more detail in this and we start letting people look through the assessments, it will be very popular, especially for adults. Because of that on-demand assessment, we might see a lot more customers maybe reinstating those adult courses in the evenings in colleges, which we've seen almost demise since 8202 came in. Because of the requirement for on-demand assessment, it's sort of taken away the flexibility for those adult evening courses, whereas I think this brings that back. So yes, we will still have an alternative in 8202, but my recommendation would be keep your mind open, have a look at the reformed qualification, because it might be that it's a preferred route for yourselves to deliver and for your adults to make it more flexible. Will there be exemptions into this for 9289? So if we've had similar questions from the apprenticeship. So if you've got somebody who's part way through the apprenticeship and maybe they're an adult, obviously 19 plus, and wants to progress onto this to get the level 3, if you like, you would need to find some way of certificating that level 2, because that's the prerequisite. That's what we've mapped into all the qualification details for IFA, etc. So they've got to have a prerequisite level 2 certificate. Now, if you think they've covered equivalent units at level 2 in electrical or plumbing, the route would be get them into and registered on a level 2 program, RPL those units into a level 2, 2365 8202 or 6035 8202 plumbing. Get those completed, then you've got your prerequisite, then you can RPL, if anything, into this new reformed qualification. So you'll have your prerequisite. Now, will you be able to carry through some of those assessments as RPL if they are equivalent to level 3 from the apprenticeships? Potentially the assessments will still need to be carried out because these are synoptic assessments at the end of the programme, but the prior learning they've already completed won't have to be covered again. So you will be able to map into the level 2, get them the prerequisite. They may have already covered some of the level 3 units. You'll move that forward into the new reformed qualification. They might have already covered some of the work before, or they might have to not cover everything again, and then they'll sit the reformed qualification assessments. So apologies for the pauses here. We've got a large amount, and I'm trying to pick out the ones which are sort of not covered already. So we've had a question, why can't we, certificate for BS 7671? I think the answer to that is we know it's an equivalent with regards to knowledge. It's a knowledge unit. I think we want to, though, encourage people with 18th edition, or the end goal is that, or they are competent electricians. So we will work with industry on that and get thoughts on that. In theory, they have completed an equivalent knowledge, but we would encourage the 18th edition to be embedded into, when they eventually progress into the 5357, 2357, we acknowledge that then when their goal is to become competent and obviously eventually receive that gold card. If a learner holds an electrical level 2, 2365 or 8202, but are under 19 years of age, what course would you recommend they complete at level 3? So they, at the moment, they could still access the 8202 as long as they, the other option would be wait until the learner is 19 and join the reformed qualification. So at the moment, we are looking to potentially make the reform qualifications available 16 to 18, but it's the funding which will be the sticking point for a lot of colleges who draw down public funding or training centres who draw down public funding. So eventually these qualifications could be available 16 to 18, but it might only be on a full cost recovery basis. Just let me work through some more. I'm going to go through some of the earlier questions just to try and make things all fair and even. So we mentioned re-registration if the candidate has failed the relevant assessment 4 times. Now, they only really need to resit, let's say, 1 unit, but unfortunately, unit registration is not available for this qualification because it's not unit assessed. So unfortunately, they would need to be re-registered on the full qualification. So how is this being mapped against the performance units for 2357? So the performance units are entirely separate. There is no work-based evidence included in these adult qualifications. So all the performance units, whether they transfer into a 2357 in electrical, 5357 electrical, or 9189 plumbing, all on-site portfolio units will still need to be completed in their entirety. Let's look at the next one. That's been covered in the presentations. So do you think the new quals can be delivered in the evening over 1 year? I mean, we unfortunately can't really answer that. We provide the guided learning hours. We provide the scope of the learner and the sort of level of the average learner, what we foresee them. Obviously, you could potentially get learners who you may get through. It depends obviously on the amount of hours you're doing, how many nights a week, things like that. I know from previous experience, if you've got somebody who might have been 3/4 the way through an apprenticeship and has already done half, already sat in on half of the delivery and has lost the job, potentially yes. If you've got somebody who's just come through from a level 2 program, never been on site and quite green, potentially not. So unfortunately, we have to leave that to the centre's discretion, the initial assessment of the learner, and for them to structure their programs accordingly. So yeah, looking at the GLH, we can definitely get that sorted. So somebody's questioned the level 2 being funded next year. Yeah, so we're talking about level 3 reformed qualifications. That was also extended in the pause and review. So 8202, level 2, level 3 funded next year. No change, no change for the level 2, still as is. So somebody's just queried that. Someone who completes this course. Yeah, again, a question on RPL into 9289. We've got to still finalise the devil in the detail. But if they've done a level 2 and this new level 3, they might go potentially, I mentioned earlier, towards phase 4. But we've got to just make sure we've completed all that mapping accordingly to confirm that. Because there is little bits and pieces which may be in the apprenticeship, which is not included in the old level 2 nowadays. So it's quite a new apprenticeship. Obviously, mapping's required and things like that. So we'll have to confirm that. But that's the way it's sort of looking at the moment. I was again a bit of an aside qualification. Are we looking to potentially reform in 2357? Again, just to give you the heads up on that, we are trying to have the conversations with industry around this. I mean, it's industry's decision to ring fence 5357 to apprentices. We could quite easily, as City and Guilds, give the option to create a 5357 dash different code so that the relevant bodies are aware how many adults they've got on program, and we could make 5357 available for adults, and that would then refresh and revise 2357 to what industry wants. But unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but we have to work with the relevant industry bodies, and qualifications in some way are under their control. That 5357 qualification has been written as part of an apprenticeship standard and is mandated by an employer group who almost own that qualification. So we have to follow industry's lead on that. We're still having those discussions, and let's see how that shapes up. We've answered the level 2 funding still being available. Will they need on-site assessments on completion of this course? So there's no on-site assessment required as part of the reformed qual. If they move to the apprenticeship, then they'll still need to carry out all on-site assessments units. Apologies if that just got blurred in the previous response. I'm just flicking through. Feel free to drop any more questions in the top. Apologies if you're hearing me clicking around and stuff. I'm trying to rattle through as many of these as I can so you all get your answers. I think we're getting there. Could you use a skills if an apprentice who completed many units but loses an employment? So I'm assuming that a little bit like the related question earlier. If you've got an apprentice who loses an employment, the prerequisite is a level 2. So you'd have to complete an RPL exercise, an initial assessment, map those into a level 2 program, get them certificated onto a level 2, so they then meet the prerequisite for the level 3 program. Questions are drying up slightly. I'm just going to scroll through and see if there's anything we've missed. Just one here. So if we want to run a course level 2 progressions for next year, so 25-26, when the reformed quals will be available, but for 16 to 19-year-olds, we have to run 8202. Yes, I mean, like I said, we are looking into the potential of making these available 16 to 19, but funding will limit the use for many centres. So if that's a funded qual for 25-26, the answer is yes. Potentially, if we get this available for 16 to 18, then you could potentially run that, but it would be full cost recovery. But that's in the motions at the moment. Will ECS accept the unit credit for the 18th edition to enable them to get a gold card when they have completed 2357 and AM2? They won't need to accept that if they've completed a 2357 and an AM2. They will have met all the requirements to get the gold card. So we're not saying we can't use this unit from the reformed qual to RPL into a competency qual. You know, it's the 5357 unit, it's an equivalent. But we're looking to not certificate because we feel that industry prefer that is aligned to the competent electrician, etc. So yeah, we're still working with industry on a lot of those discussions, and things are changing constantly, but that's where we are at the moment. How many days for the course? Again, the guided learning hours are in the qualification handbook, and it's up to your discretion and the ability of your learners, your initial assessment induction process, to be able to identify skills needs of those learners and how you're going to deliver it. Let me just go back to the top. So as well as 2357, you need the 18th edition to get a gold card. To accept. So yeah, I mean, our apprenticeship and 5357, 2357 do include the 18th edition unit and are accepted as an equivalent. So it is an equivalent to that when you're going through that application process. If you've completed 2357 and 5357 and you wanted, or the employer wanted, an extra 18th edition 2382 certificate, then there's guidance in the appendix in the handbook on how you can claim that. So if you know, a lot of employers do still like that certificate. So if you do want that for your learners, there is a small certification fee, and there's guidance in the appendix in both 5357 and 2357 handbooks. I think we're drying up with regards to questions now. Apologies if there has any been any interference and background noise. If you'd have seen the performance we had to run through before we started the presentation, you would have been expecting why, to be fair. So yeah, we had a few technical issues and a bit of a run around into different rooms and things like that. So apologies if there's been interference, but I think we have more or less got through most things. Any last things? Do you want to drop the questions in the questions tab? We'll give it a minute or so. Otherwise, I think it's pertinent to sort of close the webinar and save everybody's time. Okay. I don't think there's any more questions, Simon. I'll hand back to you if you want to just close the session.
Thank you, Rob. And again, thank you for answering those questions. Again, we've had some IT issues where I've not been able to see the questions coming through. But I'd like to take the time to thank everybody for joining us today, and I hope we've managed to answer some of your queries. Please feel free to either drop myself or one of the team any messages or the customer care if it's anything you want us to follow up on. And I hope you have a good day. Thank you.